Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Michelle's Basement Podcast. All right, we good now? We good? Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Michelle's Basement Podcast. I am your host, Barack Obama. Since leaving the presidency and turning 57, I have acquired an insatiable desire to own more New Balance sneakers, as well as a massive appetite for studying the music of Ludwig van Beethoven. It all began while I was proposing my first economic stimulus package. I needed music to stimulate my mind and allow myself to feel some compassion towards those across the concert hall aisle. After one of his famed Tuesday ice cream runs, I had Joe Biden search for music that would address this dilemma. He proposed listening to the fourth movement of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, so I sat down to listen and quickly eat my ice cream before Michelle caught me eating too much peanut butter chunk. Again. I truly enjoyed the first three movements of the work. They reminded me of a nice economy on a moderate growth pace. However, once the fourth movement began to play, I was immediately shocked by how it upended the calm of the third movement with the force of a drone strike. Let us take a listen now. By leading his final movement with this dissonance, Beethoven enabled his Ode to Joy to have the potential to reach the revolutionary conclusion that all people partake in a universal brotherhood. Though this idea is of course very apparent in the text of Schiller's An die Freude, which Beethoven sets to music for this symphony, Beethoven fully reverberates this revolutionary idea by way of a solo vocalist who belts Beethoven's own words, "O friends, not these sounds. Rather, let us sing more pleasant ones and more full of joy." Through Beethoven's opening dissonance and the dramatic entrance of his own text prefacing Schiller's poem, Beethoven links his Ninth Symphony to the movement for human equality, thus making these two moments the most important moments of the symphony. In this podcast, we will explore features of the fourth movement of the symphony which further solidify the impact of these two key moments. We are very lucky to have my friends Dr. Phil and Borat with us today to further make this case. We were just listening to the fourth movement last night for our Wednesday night sleepover with Joe. Michelle made me turn it down, but we kept listening and eating our ice cream. Let us take a listen to this grand vocal entrance before turning our attention towards my friend Phil.
Thank you kindly. I will outline the musical context of the first vocal entrance, both in terms of its harmonic surroundings and the musical scaffolding which organizes the work at large and small scales. These aspects will underscore how Beethoven tied his work to the movement for human equality. And yes, that is exactly how Wednesday night went, Barack. There I was getting excited about my life and my ice cream while listening to that fourth movement. Next thing I knew, Michelle was hollering at us, saying we needed to be more responsible and that this followed our clear Wednesday night sleepover behavior. In that moment, I realized the tumult in her tone mirrored the chaos represented in the fourth movement up till the vocal entrance at measure 216. Even the relative stability of the presentation of the now famous Ode to Joy, tuned by the cello and contrabass sections, is rendered uncertain by subjecting it to variations, which then lead to chromatic alternations in the harmony. These alterations create a momentary shadow, which Beethoven rescues his audience from bringing the music back to the dominant key of D, meaning A. Nonetheless, he decides to keep his audience guessing at what he's going to make his marquee moment of the symphony, as just before the first vocal entrance, he utilizes a fully diminished seventh chord based on his leading tone. Brack.
Will you play that moment for us?
sure is a crunch moment which grants even more credence to the power of the movement's beginning dissonance, since it creates a suspense which listeners might fear cannot be resolved. Furthermore, it heightens the impact of the powerful yet comforting words that follow. This combination readies listeners for a common message of human brotherhood. While hiding our contraband ice cream from Michelle, I also realized that in the same way that our Wednesday night party was reminiscent of our behavior at previous Wednesday night sleepovers, so too does the fourth movement draw from the previous themes of the symphony. Furthermore, Beethoven uses the compositional device of instrumental recitative to join together all of these varying thematic recalls. In fact, Brack, Joe Biden was telling me during our Thursday lawn mowing session last week that we can even view these recollections as being part of a fractal pattern, which is a concept of mathematics stating that some large-scale structures continue to occur even as the scale of the structure decreases. Understanding the reminiscence of the previous three movements of an anticipation of the Freudian tone, in this light allows us to realize that this smaller structure, in which reminiscent themes are rejected from the theme of joy, is a fractal of the first three movements, which are rejected in favor of the fourth movement. I think we both would say, Barack, that this fractal structure is fully realized by the first vocal soloist entrance. Beethoven's never-before-seen symphonic compositional technique of incorporating a vocalist into a symphony clearly tells his audience that what is to come will tower over all preceding parts of the work. Through this, Beethoven clearly throws his full support behind the egalitarian ideals of the fourth movement. In characteristic fashion, Beethoven composes this final movement with intention of making his audience earn
the vocal melody.
To this point, Manoj Solomon writes, Elysium is gained only by overcoming terrifying obstacles. The road to immortality leads through death. The baritone proposed search for something more pleasant and filled with joy must cross the barrier of the terror fanfare. I will show how this terror, intensified by the start of the fourth movement, is answered and supplanted by the initial vocal entrance. The fourth and first movements openings differ in that the
First movement comes from complete nothingness, the tohu wavohu,
while the fourth movement begins with the malevolence added to chaos. Let us feast our ears upon these two sections and note their differences. The opening of movement 1 will first be played, followed by the opening of movement 4. Now that we see how Beethoven introduces evil into his composition in the finale, it is clear as to why the first vocal entrance marks such an important point for the entire work. The entrance makes it clear that the sheer malevolence introduced in the beginning of the fourth movement will indeed be dispelled surely as the sound and my TV ratings will rise. Beethoven takes his audience on a journey as long as the Texas Panhandle in the finale testing his previous themes from the Ninth Symphony against this force of evil, thereby showing the various finales that he could have used. Ultimately, Ludwig proves that only the music of Ode to Joy is strong enough to overtake the forces of musical chaos. This same chaos was present in Beethoven's real life, due in part to his deafness and struggle for class equality. Perhaps he knew that he needed to defeat the chaos through his Ninth Symphony on behalf of those even less fortunate than himself.
Beautiful insights as always, Dr. Phillip. Your wisdom never ceases to amaze me and the rest of the world. Here to speak more to the good doctor's point on the chaos in Beethoven's life, as well as the importance of the start of the first movement and the first vocal entrance, is the illustrious Kazakhstani journalist Borat. Hello, President Obama and good doctor. I would like very much to talk about the particular chaotic influence of Napoleon Bonaparte on Beethoven's music, which demonstrates the extreme care Beethoven took in presenting the vocal part. Following this, I will solidify the claim that the fourth movement's opening dissonance and premier vocal entrance lift the Ode to Joy theme to its full glory. Yet it's common knowledge that Beethoven was initially very fond of Bonaparte because he thought that no matter how short Napoleon was, he stood on behalf of a European peasant. However, Beethoven soon realized that Bonaparte was unjust when he crowned himself emperor, thereby abandoning the lower classes. Beethoven was obsessed by Schiller's An die Freude for 30 years, but never wrote any music accompanying these words until his Ninth Symphony. A very likely reason for this was that he felt that he could not create a work based on a message of universal brotherhood with the betrayal of Napoleon still fresh in his mind. Nonetheless, once Napoleon died, Beethoven sprung at the opportunity to compose a work based on its words. As the good Dr. Philip discussed, the Ode to Joy theme is meant to be so strong that it can ward off all evil elements of music. Beethoven himself knew when he had struck gold with finding such a theme, as he wrote, "This is it," in his sketches to indicate his discovery. Let us indeed listen now to this theme, sung for the first time in the fourth movement.
Freude schöner Götter Funken, Tochter aus Elysion. Wir betreten feuertrunken, himmlische dein Heiligtum. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode streng getrennt. Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel war.
It is indeed very nice and easy to see why this is a moment which would have elicited such a reaction from Beethoven. Furthermore, we can clearly see why the opening of the fourth movement and the first vocal entrance are granted even more importance in relation to this theme. Without the introduction of a malevolent theme, there would be no reason for Beethoven to work towards such a resounding melody. In addition, if Beethoven had only included the Ode to Joy theme in the symphony without the vocal soloist first making a bold proclamation, then the stability of the Joy theme would be unearned. Beethoven needs his listeners to understand just how hard-fought the battle to sing the Ode to Joy theme was before being allowed to hear it. It is also my belief that since the message of Beethoven's work is universal brotherhood between all, a single individual had to first approach this theme because the smallest group in any society which may face discrimination is the individual. Through the soloist being absorbed into the chorus, Beethoven illustrates how each person from any group can enter into this grand narrative of fraternity. Thank you very much, Borat, for your compelling words. Now let me be clear. The opening and first vocal entrance of the fourth movement are the two cruxes which define the fourth movement and entire Ninth Symphony by introducing and dispelling musical chaos, which is representative of the chaos of Beethoven's own life. Through this, Beethoven ushers in his dear Enlightenment notion of human equality. Thus, his usage of vocalists in his symphony, as well as the manner in which he introduced and promulgated their fraternal words, was truly revolutionary in the movement for human equality. What an incredible construction of human achievement. We thank all of you for listening to the Michelle's Basement podcast. Good night.